Okay, let's get started. Welcome everybody. I see in the group of people on Zoom a lot of familiar faces and a few ones that I don't know. So welcome to those who are here every week, and welcome to those who are here for the first time. Very, very happy to see you all. Anyone who knows our Sefer over here knows that the thing that makes us most happy is when all kinds of Jews come together for the same purpose of bringing Kedusha into the world and to do good things together and to be done each other l'chav zchus and build beauty and elokus in the world. So I'm so happy to see the regulars and the new people as well, and to those who are joining us in person. Should I say a kol shekain? All the more so that we're happy to see you. Everybody is invited to come in person to the shiur 53 Bevshire, 9 o'clock Monday nights, and anyone who wants to join on Zoom is also welcome to join. So who am I? She asked. So my name is Avram Gislason, and I, together with my good chaver here, Shmuley Fuchs, are presenting this chabura. We are the founders, really, of Breslov Thornhill, which is an organization that teaches Breslov Torah in Thornhill. We get together, we sing nigunim, we daven together. We also have a shul called Kahal Yereim of Thornhill, which is a very, very special place. And once again, where some of the main things we focus on are Achdus and Avos Yisrael, and learning the Torah of Rabbi Nachman, and Chassidus of all kinds, and even regular halacha also, if you can believe it.
Once in a while.
Sometimes. So this chabura that we're doing now, does that make sense? Nirale? Yeah? Good? Okay, and if anybody wants to get on our email lists or any of our WhatsApp groups or whatever it is, please, you can send a email to info@breslovthornhill.com. info@breslovthornhill.com. That's BR.
Just add it to the chat.
Yeah.
Yes. That's really the smart thing to do, I guess. Okay, here it comes. Okay, let's get going. So this shiur today is going to be a little shorter than it's going to be for the rest of the book club.
Or calm?
Calm. Is going to be a little shorter than the rest of the shiurim of the chabura because it's the introduction. The format of this chabura is going to be in a book club format, meaning everyone is going to have access to this book that we're going to be learning. The book is called The Story of Our Lives by Rabbi Yaakov Klein, and it is Rabbi Yaakov Klein's Perush explanation on the story of Rabbi Nachman, the Lost Princess. So the way it's going to run is that every week we'll have homework, and on our own we'll read through a portion of it, maybe a chapter. If it's a long chapter, maybe part of it, and then we'll get together, and each week we'll have for maybe 20 minutes to half an hour, a shiur, and then after that we will address some practical points that we can really grab a hold of and really, take into ourselves and really use to work on ourselves and to come closer to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And then after that, it'll be open for discussion. And the idea is that we work together learning the Sefer. We learn deep ideas, and we learn amazing things that Rabbi Nachman put into these stories. We'll talk about the amazing nature of Rabbi Nachman and the stories in a minute. But that then, after that, we'll come together and we'll discuss, what does this mean to me? How can I use this to change me? It's like we always like to say, we don't sit here, we say this like almost every week in our Shabbos Likutei Moran Chabura. We say that this Torah is amazing and we leave there totally on fire. But the point is not just to be intellectually stimulated. We don't want to make Rabbi Nachman's words Devarim B'Teilim. We want them to become part of us. We want them to go into our hearts. We want them to go into our souls, and we want to change through them. So the point of taking the story and trying to integrate it and discuss it and how it relates to us is that it should really become a part of us, and not just something that we learn, that intellectually stimulates us. So that's going to be the format. And, we're making it up as we go here, like we like to do. So it's possible that it'll change a little bit from week to week. Maybe the timing will change, maybe it'll be a longer shiur, maybe it'll be a shorter shiur, and we'll see. I would ask that in the shiur portion of the can you mute everybody? In the shiur portion, if you save the questions till after the shiur, and then that'll be part of the discussion period. Everybody with me? Can I get a thumbs up or a high five or something? All right. Welcome. Come on in. Alona, if you want to grab a Sefer, they're over here in the box. Yeah. Okay. So, everybody, any questions on this specific aspect, the format of the shiur and the format of the chabura before we move on? No. Okay.
No questions.
You have to unmute yourself if you want to speak, by the way. So, okay. So, I guess next let's move on. Let's talk a little bit about Rabbi Nachman and a little bit about the stories. And what do you got for us, Shmuley?
Yeah. So, as I was speaking with the Rav before, we were saying where to start with this. So, I think it's important to just put into context. When Rabbi Nachman started telling stories and why he started telling stories, especially relevant to this story, the story of the lost princess, which is the first story that Rabbi Nachman told. So Rabbi Nachman didn't start telling stories really until close to the end of his life, the last, I think, couple years of his life. This was after he had given over, I think, the great majority of Likutei Moharan already, which is very dense, deep Torah from very high worlds. And Rabbi Nachman said to the Hasidim, who were his followers at the time, he said, I've been telling you, I've been trying everything. I've been giving you all kinds of Torahs, all kinds of eitzahs, all kinds of answers, all kinds of advice, and how to make ourselves the people that we need to be, that we want to be. And I see that it hasn't quite worked. We need to try something else. We need to do something new. And he said, I'm going to start telling you stories. So it's an interesting move on Rabbi Nachman's part. A lot of people, they think of stories, especially the types of stories that Rabbi Nachman tells, which, they're really fairy tale like, with princesses and pirates and all kinds of things. And some people might think that this is for children or what, but I think what he was trying to do really was put people into a position where they could let their guard down and kind of be real. When you tell stories, whether it be to children or adults, but let's think about children for a minute, because I don't know how many of us have worked on studying stories. But, a child hears a story and, whether they're able to verbalize it or not necessarily, the messages of the story have a way of going into the person. Whether they're, actively trying to let that happen or not, just by nature, because their guard is down. They're not being told something, you got to do this, don't do that. Pay attention. You're there listening to a story, so things have a way of going in more. So, Rabbi, do you want to add anything to that, or?
Yeah, sure. So let's talk about stories a little bit here. So I'm gonna say a few things about the concept of stories, and specifically Rabbi Nachman's stories, and then I'm gonna tell one story about a story that's inside a story. Okay?
Sorry, can I just add one thing
Please.
to what I was saying?
Please do.
Yeah, well, the other thing I just wanted to say is, so I think something that we need to, we should have in mind as we endeavor on this project here, as we go on this journey with Rabbi Nachman and with Rabbi Yaakov Klein, is to just approach it with an open mind and an open heart, and try to let the words go in without, you don't have to actively try, but just to try to not be blocked off to it and let things come in. And that's why we're going to go slowly through it. And I think one of the challenges will be, as we're reading the book, is to, we're going to say, okay, this week we're going to do chapter 1, or we're going to do half of chapter 3, or whatever it is. Let's try to hold yourself back from going further than we're supposed to go, because these things, they do need time to the ideas, the concepts need time to go in and to percolate, and we'll get together and we'll discuss them, and we'll bounce things off each other, and we'll see where it takes us.
Awesome. Okay, so what kind of stories are we talking about here? Rabbi Nachman talks about something a lot throughout all of the Likutei Moharan, and it's a concept of sheina, of sleep, which plays a big role in this particular story of the Lost Princess. But in the big picture, it plays a big role with the idea of stories on their own. Rabbi Nachman talks about the fact that we can find ourselves in life living like we're asleep. In fact, a person can go through an entire week totally asleep. And in fact, it's possible a person can go through 70 years, chas v'shalom, asleep. What do we mean by asleep? We mean not awake to the reality of what am I here for? Why am I here in this world? Why was I born into this world? What am I supposed to be doing? I could get so caught up in raising a family, in working for Parnasa, in building a business, in all the things, recreation, and I could get so drawn into spending hours in entertainment and television and movies and internet and everything that I can forget. Am I not here for some kind of bigger purpose? Is this is it? Am I just a robot going through life trying to reach certain levels of success? That's it? Maybe I've never thought about, is there something else? Is there something bigger? This is what Rabbi Nachman calls being asleep. To the extent that he says every single Rosh Hashanah, it's called really Rosh Hashanah, because there's a new Satan, a new force. Every year, we woke ourselves up through the previous year, we tried to get to a new level. There's going to be a brand new Satan who's going to try to put us right back to sleep. So Rabbi Nachman said that there's a special type of story that are called Sipurei Maisius mi Shanos Kadmonius, old time stories from ancient times. It doesn't mean that the stories were written in ancient times. It means it's a type of story that harnesses ancient forces in them. And these types of stories, Rabbi Nachman said, the world thinks that we tell stories in order to help people fall asleep. A bedtime story, right? You tell, I know I did this for years. Every single night, read stories to the children to help them fall asleep. Rabbi Nachman said, my stories are to wake people up. And like Shmuley was saying, the power of a story is that it can get into our kishkes. It's not just like reading a fact, a list of do's or don'ts, or a list of, factual representations of information. A story goes right into our hearts. And in particular, there's a certain type of story that really, really goes into our hearts and really affects us. And that is when we hear a story, we see a story, and we see ourselves within that story. We see our own life within that story. We see our own struggles within that story. And when we experience that type of story, it has a tremendous, powerful effect on us. So I have a, welcome, Sandra, come on in. I have a story that I heard from Rav Moshe Weinberger. And it's a story about the concept of stories. There's a few, and we could tell stories for an hour here about this subject in particular, but we're just going to pick one. And this story, those of you who have come to a Lost Princess shiur that we started before, you'll know the story, but it's kedai to hear it. I could tell it every day and have a positive effect on myself from it. So, the story is about the Toldos Yaakov Yosef. The Toldos Yaakov Yosef was one of the very first Talmidim of the Baal Shem Tov, and he is what they say is the first Chassidish Sefer that was ever published. Was the Sefer called the Toldos Yaakov Yosef. Yaakov Yosef of Polonoi is who this Rav was. And it said about the Toldos Yaakov Yosef that he was a kapdan. A kapdan is someone who's like very kind of controlling and always has to be exactly, things have to be a certain way, and he was makpid, very like, I don't know how to say that in English. How do you say makpid? What?
A yeki.
In English. Someone said a yeki, he's a yeki. English. He was very stringent. He was very particular with himself and with other people. And very sharp also, right? This was the reputation of Rabbi Yaakov Yosef of Polonoi. And he was the Rav of the whole city. And he was a ginormous Talmud Chacham. Like he knew everything. He was renowned Europe-wide as a huge Talmud Chacham. And on top of that, he was a fierce misnaged. That means he was very anti the Torah of the Baal Shem Tov. He was very anti-Chassidus at the time.
Anti the Torah of the Baal Shem Tov.
Of the Baal Shem Tov, yeah. Anti the Torah of the Baal Shem Tov. But huge Talmud Chacham, kaptan, right? You got a vision of this person in your mind? We're telling a story. We have to see it up there. Okay. So it happened that one morning, the Rav, the Toldos Yaakov Yosef, was coming to shul in the morning like he always did, bright and early. And he walked into the shul, and just the Gabbai was there. The Gabbai and the Rav were there together. And that wasn't so unusual. They're waiting for the people of the town to come in to daven shachars, to say the morning prayers. And, okay, normal. Time goes by, nobody's coming in. And the Rav's looking around like, where is everybody? What's happening? And he asks the Gabbai, like, what's going on? Where is everybody? And the Gabbai says, I think there's a commotion in the town square. So the Rav says, why don't you go and see what's going on there and tell them to come and daven shacharis. Right? Just because there's a commotion in the town square, we still got to daven. So the Gabbai goes and he comes back and he says to the Rav, yeah, Rav, there's a Jew in the town square, and he's telling all the people stories, and the people don't want to leave. And so the Rav gets very upset, and he says, you go back there and you tell them, enough with these stories. It's time to daven shacharis. We got to daven. There's a Shulchan Aruch. Let's go. So the Gabbai goes back, and the Rav is waiting. Toldos Yaakov is waiting, and he's waiting. He's waiting, and the Gabbai doesn't come back. And he's getting furious. So he walks and goes to the town square, and the story goes, he saw the Baal Shem Tov telling over stories to the people, and he heard something that the Baal Shem Tov said, and from that moment on, he never left the side of the Baal Shem Tov. And he became one of the most important students of the Baal Shem Tov and the first published Hasidic Sefer ever. That's not the end of the story. The question is, what was the story? What did he hear from the Baal Shem Tov that caused the fiery misnaged of the Toldos Yaakov Yosef to never leave the side of the Baal Shem Tov? What did he hear from him? So the story goes like this. The story he heard from the Baal Shem Tov was like this. There was a town in Europe, and in this town, it was a normal small town in Europe, and it had one shul. That was it. And in this shul, there was one simple Jew, Pashtiyid. And this simple Jew was relatively poor. He had to work very, very hard to feed his family. So he would come into the shul every morning, and he would daven, and then right away he would finish very quickly, and right away when it was finished he would leave. He had to run to work because if he didn't make money that day, his family didn't eat, right? He wasn't on salary. He had to make money that day to feed his family. So he didn't have time to learn, didn't have time to do anything. That's what he had to do. And in the same town there was a wealthy family, and the wealthy family had a daughter. And when it came time for the daughter to get married, they brought in a boy from another town, also a wealthy family. And this boy would dress very, very, perfectly, everything just the way it should be. And he would come to davening early. He would stay late and learn for hours in the Beis Midrash afterwards. And he was a good learner. He was a Talmud Chacham, right? But he was also, he knew that he was a Talmud Chacham. He felt he was a Talmud Chacham. He was a little bit of a Balgaiva, he was a little bit arrogant. And so he would look at the other people in the town and he would say, ugh, they're so much lower than me. This is the way he felt. Happened one day that these two people were going, there was a simcha in the town, a bris in the town. And the bris was going to be at the house of the family. So they both happened to that day leave the shul at the same time, which didn't usually happen. And they're walking, mamish together, down the path to go to this house. And the simple Jew, he gives a krechts. He says, Oi, I wish I could learn Torah like you do. I wish I had time that I could stay afterwards and learn Torah like you do. And the Talmud Chacham, the Balgaiva, he looked down at this simple Jew and he gave a smirk, a little kind of grin, like, you're nothing like me. You'll never be like me. That was his smirk. Happened to be that not too long after this story, they both passed away on the same day. The simple Jew and the Talmud Chacham. And their neshamas went up at the same time, and wouldn't you know it, they were in the same courtroom, in the Beis Din Shalmala, having their cases heard upstairs. And so, first of all, the simple Jew's case came to the court, and they judged his case, and they said, okay, they weighed the scales, they said, okay, you're going straight to Gan Eden. And the Talmud Chacham was very surprised. He was like, oh, okay, didn't expect that, but all right. And then he's next on the docket. His case comes to the court, and they put his stuff on the scales, and they say, oh, you got to go to Gehenna. And the guy's like, what? I think I see what happened here. I think you must have probably mixed up our two cases, the two of us, because we came at the same time, and really, I'm supposed to go to Gan Eden, and he's supposed to go to Gehenna. They say, no, it's not. We don't make mistakes. He's going to Gan Eden, you're going to Gehenna, right? And so he said, what? How could that be? I learned every single day for hours. I woke up early and davened. I did everything I was supposed to do. I did all the mitzvahs. You're telling me I have to go to Gehenna? So they say, if you want, we'll explain to you exactly how our judgments were made. And he said, okay, you know what we did with your friend who went straight to Gan Eden, the simple Jew? We took out our scales and we put all his mitzvahs on one side, all of the davening he did and the mitzvahs he did on one side, and all of his averos on the other side. And you know what? He didn't get to learn a lot. He didn't have time to do many extra mitzvahs. So his scales were balanced. But then, on the other side of the scale, that krach that he made, when he said, oi, I wish I could learn like you. I wish that I had time that I could learn and daven like you, went on the other side of the scales, and they were tipped, and he went straight to Gan Eden. And you, Mr. Talmud Chacham, we put your mitzvahs and averos on the scale, and you had a lot of mitzvahs. You had a ton of mitzvahs. Not too many averos. You were looking very good. Until we put that smirk that you made when you looked down at that other Jew, and you looked down at him and thought that he was so much less than you on the other side, and the scales flipped the other way. That's why you have to go down to Gehenna, and he gets to go to Gan Eden. So this story, that's the end of the story, by the way. This story is the story that the Toldos Yaakov Yosef heard. The Toldos Yaakov Yosef, who was a huge Talmud Chacham, who was a kapdan, who was this type of person. What did he hear? He heard in this story his own story. He saw that my life is being explained in this story, and it hit him right in the heart. That's what drew him in and made it that he never left the side of the Baal Shem Tov after this. And he became the holy Toldos Yaakov Yosef. Right? So why do I feel it's important to tell at least one of these stories? Because there's many stories like this. at least one of these stories, when we're starting a chabura about Sipurim Isis, about the stories of Rabbi Nachman, right? Because this story, Rabbi Yaakov Klein called this book the story of our lives. This story, The Lost Princess, is the story of each and every one of us. Mamish, exactly. And we're going to learn the story, and we're going to see our own lives unfolding in this story. We're going to see how this story relates exactly to me at every point. Every detail is important. Every detail. I can keep talking for a long time, but when Rabbi Nachman wrote his stories, we're going to see they're like fables, right? Like Shmuley was saying, they're not like it's not like a story about. It's not like the story I just told, a story about rabbis, right? It's not that. It's like a children's fable. It's like a nursery story. It's about a princess and the father, the king, and she gets lost, and there's a crisis, and there's a hero, the whole thing, right? It's this type of story. These are what the stories are like. And a person might think, oh, why did Rabbi Nachman write these simple stories? So there's a certain Sefer that we have over here called Shifchei HaTzadik, and it's a collection of quotes from other great tzaddikim about Rabbi Nachman. And on the topic of the Sipurim Isis, of his stories, you have quotes from the greatest Kabbalists and the greatest Rebbes. And one of the things that's a common theme in these things is they say that the stories of Rabbi Nachman belong in the catalog of Sefer Kabbalah, the books of Kabbalah. Every detail in Rabbi Nachman's stories, every word, kimat, almost, is a Kabbalistic bombshell. Everything has deep, deep, deep meaning. You'll see when we start, it's going to take us a long time to get through like one sentence because there's so much packed into it. They're so deep and so amazing. And each word, the most amazing thing, why it's called the story of our lives and why it's a story is because it's going to go, each word is going to go right into our hearts. Each word is going to take something out for us that we didn't even know was there. It's going to be mamish amazing. This is the nature of the Sipurim Isis of Rabbi Nachman, of the stories of Rabbi Nachman. So like Shmuley said also, we have to leave ourselves open. If we're coming to do this together, and we're gonna have a little shiur every week, and then we're gonna take practical points, and we're gonna have discussion about it, right? Why are we here? Why are we here? We're here because we want these words to go into our hearts. We want to change. We want to be woken up. We want to experience something that we haven't experienced before. And the story of our lives, the Lost Princess can do this. There's one other thing I want to say at some point. Maybe I'll just say it now, and then we'll talk about the books and where they can get it and stuff. Yeah, makes sense? Yeah. I just want to tell very shortly, very, very, very short, very quick, just an experience that I had specifically with this story of the Lost Princess. So, many of you know, but maybe some of you don't, that I also used to be a fierce misnaged. I also used to be very, very against Hasidus. I was not into it at all, and certain points of my life, I was anti-Hasidus, and I used to learn in yeshiva and kollel, and I was very into that world, and I loved it, no complaints, right? But there was a few things that really woke me up to a different way of thinking. One of them was like this. There was a certain Breslover in the city who would go around and he would give books away. He was a nanach, right? And he would bring different books and dance with me a little bit, like Kedarka B'Kodesh, right? That's what they do. And one time he brought me a book, an English book, The Stories of Rabbi Nachman. And so, as I said, I used to every single night read a story to my children. And so this one night, I was like, hey, this is my son Akiva. Akiva, why don't we read this book? This is Stories of Rabbi Nachman, Hasidic stories. And so I expected that they would be these kind of rabbi stories, right? And so, anyway, we went up, I was putting to bed, we read through the story of the Lost Princess. And the whole time, as we were reading through the story, I'm like, what am I reading? What is this? This is a Hasidic story? Like, I mamish had no clue what I was reading whatsoever. And, but But he liked it. It's a good kid story. Kids like it. I liked it also. Anyway, put my son to bed, and I start coming downstairs, and I just have this feeling like a different, what did I just read? I had this feeling like, what did I just read? What just happened? I literally felt like something had changed within me completely. And I went downstairs and told my wife. I was like, I just read this story. And I don't know what to tell you, but I feel like this story did something to my soul. I told her. Just when I read the story for the first time. And
even as a fierce misnagid.
As a fierce misnagid. I might have been warming up a little bit already by then. It's possible.
After the story warmed you up a little.
Right, yeah. Yeah. So I feel like these stories of Rabbi Nachman are life-changing. This story in particular, completely life-changing. And Baruch Hashem, we have a wonderful group of, maybe 30 people online and another 10 here. And if we stick together learning this Torah, it's mamash going to take us places that we didn't expect we'd get to. I'm telling you. I promise you that if you learn this Torah, if you learn this story and you learn it in the right way, it will for sure 100% change you in the most amazing way. For sure. So let's do this together every week. Let's not miss. Let's make it a strong chabura, and mamash, it'll change our lives, God willing.
So just
talk about the books a little bit.
I just wanted to add one more point to some of the things you just said.
Yeah.
So I think the reason, I just want to touch on the reason a little bit why this story seems to have this power that we're speaking about, specifically this story that we'll see when we get into the books. I don't know if anyone started yet. Certainly some of you have seen the story, but it starts before the story where it says Rabbi Nachman was on the way. He was Baderech, and he spoke up and he said this story. And anyone who heard it had Hirhurei Tshuva, which we'll get into next week. But they had a desire to do Tshuva. So I think the reason why, and from Rabbi Giselson's experience, that I don't know if I ever heard that story from you before, that you just said, which is awesome. But I think the reason why that is you'll see when you get into the story that if I had to pick one or two words, really, it's one word, but it's expressed in 2 words of what the story is touching, is what string it's pulling at. It's yearning and ratzon, desire. That yearning that a person has for something more, right? That something more is their relationship with Hashem, and we're going to explore all the different aspects of that. But for that reason, it relates to everybody. And as I heard it put from a good friend of mine, the only type of person that this story is not for is someone who's not struggling in some area of their life. If you're struggling in some area of your life, whether it's ruchnius, gashmius, business, children, marriage, anything, this story is going to speak to you, and it's going to speak directly to your struggle with whatever it is in your life, and how to hopefully deal with it.
Awesome.
So that's just wanted to add that.
Awesome
point there, and that's what really you see from the story you told about the Toldos Yaakov Yosef, that the simple Jew, he had that aspect of yearning.
Mm-hmm.
He was yearning for something else. Right. The Talmud Chacham, he was good.
Yeah.
He wasn't looking for anything. He wasn't struggling, as far as he thought, at least not in this world.
Amazing. Okay. Yeah. So you want to tell them about the books and how we can get them?
Yeah. So if anybody needs books, we have a number of copies. Hopefully, if everyone needs a copy who's on the Zoom right now, then we'll have to order more. Just be in touch with us either through info@breslovthornhill.com, or I think on the flyer is my phone number. You can text me or call me. We'll hook you up with a book. The cost is $25 for the book. And what else and I guess we need to give out the homework for next week, right?
Yeah. Homework time, folks.
Can we in book form, or can we have it digitally?
I don't have access to it digitally. The author, Rabbi Yaakov Klein, I don't think he's made it available digitally for understandable reasons. That was another note I wanted to just add, that I just want everyone here to know Rabbi Yaakov Klein is super, super excited about this Chabura happening. We have his bracha to go ahead with it, but not to distribute it digitally, unfortunately. That's why I was taking pictures before. He wanted to see pictures of the Chabura in action.
Okay, so if you're wherever you are, these books are likely available. We have I think 20 copies here. 40, 20.
There was 20.
We have 20 here, and
going fast.
And we can order more, and they can be shipped also. So please just let us know. Homework wise, let's say like this. For sure, everybody. I mean, it's kedai to read the introductions in the book, for sure. But for sure, the very beginning of the book has the story, the actual Lost Princess story, the whole entire story with Hebrew and English. So read the whole story of the Lost Princess. Don't worry, you can get to the end. And it's not gonna, there's no spoiler alerts here. And the first chapter. The whole first chapter. And we'll get into some amazing, amazing concepts next week. Thank you, everybody, for coming. Before we close up, any questions or comments? Feel free.